Should we let science change what we think about the Bible? Welcome back to Curious Christianity. I'm Adam, and today we're exploring a really old problem, a problem back in history with Copernicus and Galileo. While both of them had made new scientific discoveries to understand our world, the church and the Bible believers pushed back hard. What kind of lessons can we learn from history about this? And how should we interact with science and the Bible? While I have taken the time to think about this question very seriously, I must admit that it has been a little bit convicting to go over all of the material and think very seriously, how does science impact or influence how I read Scripture? And should it do so? And I think those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. Asking a lot of Christians that question today results many times in a very simple answer. No, I wouldn't let that happen. However, on this issue of thinking about what happened in this whole issue with Galileo and Copernicus, they questioned the readings of the text because of science. And they came to the conclusion that the earth was not the center of the universe and that it was the earth that seemed to be moving and not the sun, when all of the Bible believers believed very, very firmly that it was the sun that moved and the earth that stood still. So here's my question to you. Do you believe that the sun moves and the earth stands still? Seriously answer that question for yourself. Now, everyone I've asked so far have all said, no, of course not. I don't believe that. The sun stands still and the earth revolves around it. Okay, great. And it's like, well, how do you account for that? Well, it's phenomenological language. It's a matter of the sun looks like it's moving, but it's really not. It's a matter of my perspective. And so I'm speaking from a point of perspective. And of course, I would agree with that. But my question is, how do you know that? How do you know it? Because to me, there is nothing in Scripture that gets you to understand or believe that. In fact, there are a lot of verses about the sun moving and the earth standing still. So can you honestly tell me that the reason you know the earth moves around the sun and the sun stands still is because of the Bible? Or do you know that because of the new scientific information that you've learned today? So, I think that it's very important that we take the Bible very, very seriously, but I will absolutely admit, on this topic, on this issue about the sun, do I believe the sun stands still? No. Well, yes, but the sun has always stood still. The sun doesn't move across, and it doesn't move up and down the earth or around the earth. It's the earth that moves around it. How do I know that? I know that from the modern science that I've learned. And I don't think that I could defend that biblically. So let's look at like a couple verses, right? When you read this passage in Joshua 10:13, so the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself, so on and so forth. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. Now, you read that passage in light of all of these other passages. There's like 10 other passages talking about the sun rises, the sun sets, the sun does this, the sun is moving. There's all these sorts of passages that are saying this. And then you have one really powerful verse, which you have to remember, Joshua is not a poetic chapter. It's not a poetic verse. It is right there in the middle of a historical account of what's happening between Joshua and these battles. And it says the sun stopped in the middle of the sky. And obviously, this is the argument that was labeled against Copernicus and Galileo. It's like, If the sun stopped, it obviously must have been moving. And combined with the sun rises, the sun sets, the sun goes over, the sun falls down, whatever verses you want to pick, they're very, very strong. But not only that, then you look at verses for the earth. 1 Chronicles 16:30, tremble before him all the earth. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved. Psalms, he established the world. It shall not be moved. And again in Psalms, he established the world, it shall not be moved. Psalm 104, he set the earth on the foundations, it shall not be moved. Samuel 2:8, for the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. When the earth and its peoples quake, it is I who uphold its pillars firm. So this idea that the world sat on pillars and did not move was well an idea. And so the point is that if you wanted to cross-reference, does the sun move? Does the earth move? How does this all look? And you went through one by one. I think the conclusion you'll come to is that the earth does not move and the sun does. And I think it's very difficult to come to any other conclusion. So what are you supposed to do with that? I think that it's important that we remember this issue in Joshua about the sun, and we remember to remain humble and, yes, come up with good theories, to do good hermeneutics, to read the scriptures seriously, believe that the scriptures are true, but make sure that we're not reading more into them than they are saying for themselves. Almost everyone I know has admitted that the Bible is not a science book, and so we can't necessarily do a scientific hermeneutic from it. But we need to be very careful about what it is we're asserting, because while none of us want to deny the truth of Scripture, we also, don't want to merely come to our opinions because of our own personal bias. And I get it. There are reasons to doubt communities and scientific communities at times. Hey, I understand, and I'm not saying we shouldn't question things, but I do think that we have to remain humble in our opinions sometimes and recognize that there are some things that we have changed or we believe because of what science has brought to the table, not merely because what the Bible teaches. Science has informed our views on the universe, the solar system, our ecosystem, and I think that the universe does declare the glory of the Lord. It says something about him. So we can read the book of nature and learn something about God. So let's make sure and take that into account when we're talking about Genesis. So let's study hard, and I'll see you in the next video.